All right. What's going on, guys? Glad to come back at you with some discussions. We got David Destro and Dark Portents back, and we're talking book 2 of the Empires of Dust trilogy. That is The Tower of the Living and Dying. And guys, I am excited to talk about this book. I've been chomping at the bit, waiting for these two guys to finish, and I'm excited for this discussion. But first, let's introduce these guys. In case you're new and you don't know who these guys are, even though you should, we'll have links to their channels down in the description. Guys, what's going on? David, let's start with you. What's going on, David?
Hey, what's up, guys? All right, I'm David Destro. I also have a booktube channel where I talk about fantasy, grimdark fantasy, occasionally horror. We've been reading The Tower of Living and Dying, and I'm excited to talk about it today. So,
me too, brother. Me too. Hey, Christian, how are you doing?
Good. I also have a booktube channel, and sometimes I make videos. It's just been a while.
Man, I think some people just underestimate how much it takes to put out content, especially on a regular basis. It can be tough. It takes a lot out of you. You know, being creative is a full-time job.
You guys have spoiled me too, because between you two and Christine Valestad, I realized how much more fun and easy it is to make collab videos. So I'm like, oh, you mean you want me to just talk at a camera now?
Yeah. Yes, we do.
I hear
you. Right on. Well, guys, for those wondering, this is going to be a spoiler discussion on book 2. There are plenty of spoiler-free reviews out there. We'll have some in the description, some links to that. If you're curious about these books, I highly encourage people to go out and at least try them out. They are very dark, yet lyrical and beautiful. And just, you know, a lot of fun for somebody that's looking for the dark and dastardly. So check these books out. So for those that have read these, you're in for a treat because we're about to do some deep diving. All right. So right out the gate, guys, what did you guys think of the second book compared to the first one?
I was incredibly surprised at how much I enjoyed Orhan's POV, because throughout the first book, I was like, okay, I almost want to skip through it and be like, okay, let's hurry up and get to Merith. Merith, that's where all the action and all the cool shit was. Let's go there. Book 2, Merith's POV was so chaotic that, like, just to catch my breath and go back to Orhan and be like, okay, here's an actual, like, story. And then we jump back into the chaos. Then we go back to Orhan and all his politics and just dealing with the city and how dangerous it is to be in charge of anything in Sorlost. Man, I was surprised. I was really surprised.
Yeah, I agree. I had a little tough time, I think, with Orhan's perspective in the first book, and then rolling into here. And that was one of the things I think I recognized almost immediately was I could feel just these layers of desperation coming off of this character, and it felt real. Like it really started to hit me, and it created that level of engagement that I really needed with that character and this perspective. And just from there on out, I enjoyed everything. You know what I mean? Like that was my main criticism from book 1. Here in book 2, it was smooth sailing. What about you, Christian?
So the first time I read the first book, it was all audiobook, and so it was just a confusing, chaotic mess. I didn't understand a lot of it, I don't think. And I don't remember specifically having trouble with Orhan in the first book, except for, I guess, kind of thinking, how do these two tie in? But of course, we found out how, in that he had hired them for the job, and all of that went on. But in this book, I think it's pretty uncontroversial to say that these Sorlost sequences were the most interesting sequences. They were the most engaging. There was a lot of suspense. The romance between Orhan and God, what's the guy's name? I'm about to praise how deep and engaging the romance is, and I don't remember the guy's name. What is it? Sorry.
Dareth or Dareth?
Dareth, yeah.
Something like that.
It was a great romance, and there was a lot of tension in that. And I especially liked kind of the tension around, like, when Orhan cheated on him, if the best gay sex sequences that I've ever read are from Richard K. Morgan's
Still Remains.
The Still Remains, yeah. I'm trying to think of the name of this. Land Fit for Heroes.
Yeah.
That's it. Then the best gay romance I've ever read is Orhan and his lover, even though they are toxic.
Absolutely.
It's not like
they have some issues, but
it's not ideal. It's not like I don't want to be them, but it's fun to read. It is great to read.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Jared.
I'm just gonna go shut my window real quick.
Yeah, go for it, brother.
I'll turn on my fan.
That relationship is something else. It's like watching this was one of the best fleshed out toxic relationships I have ever read. It was very well done. The amount of gaslighting and everything that's being done, it cuts through to the reader in just full effect. I mean, you feel sorry, you feel all these crazy emotions, which is why that desperation that's brewing within this character feels so real and legit.
Yeah. And the twist at the end of the Sorla sequence with you kind of, at least for me, I kind of thought that the guy who had replaced Orhan as Nithk had just kind of like fallen completely off the boat and like lost his shit. And then it turns out he had like summoned these guys from another country to come in and like reestablish him and stabilize the city. And it just left us on that cliffhanger with that, which I thought was great.
Yeah, the end of that Sorla storyline, there was so many little twists and turns, and they have the plague basically break out.
Oh yeah,
that took me by surprise. I was like,
yeah, I mean, you're talking about this is what blew me away. For me, going from book one, kind of complaining about this thread being boring, into this, it was like, dude, it's pure pandemonium, especially by the end. And it's just, not only do we get like the great desperation from Orhan, this toxic relationship between him and Dareth, that plague, but dude, Bill is actually a very strong female character in my eyes, and especially through this specific book. And just her dealing kind of with her husband and their relationship, and then into a very physical moment where she's losing fucking her pieces of her hand or whatever, like getting hacked at trying to defend her baby, right? I mean, this is a very raw, visceral moment
with her hands. Just oh man, blood. I thought they were gonna kill the baby, just because they killed the baby in the first one. I was like, oh my god, they're gonna outdo what they did in the first one and kill an even more important baby in this one. But luckily they didn't, and it seems like the baby survived. And yeah, but that whole scene with the servant and everything, and you switch perspectives, and then you think, oh shit, did everybody in that room die, or what just happened? And then again, that's just another one of the twists at the end of that like storyline. In the second half, it was just like boom, 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 one thing after another.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And I liked that. I liked a lot of things about Bill and Orhan, and also the servant. I liked that, despite the fact that he's like with Dareth, he still has this caring, nurturing relationship with Bill and like does what he can to support her. But I also like that they really showed the sort of the political economy of all of it through the servant's relationship with the family, how Bill is just able to be like, well, I don't want to see you again because something traumatic happened and you'll remind me of that. And they just like disappear the servant woman. They give her an allowance and they give her an apartment. And so it's not like, it's not like, they slit her throat or anything, but they see her as this like disposable thing that can just be removed from the situation. And then that's the viewpoint we get the plague through, is her in this tenement that they've put her in, seeing like the immigrants start to get it, and like, different sections of the professional classes start to get it. So you see the plague through that as well. A nice, like, way of kind of like killing a lot of birds with one stone. You see the class relationships, you see the plague develop, you see the way the plague affects the city, you see all of these things, and also the psychology of Bill and her like blindness to, or just lack of caring, I guess, towards people that are less than her. There's just so much shown in that.
Yeah, there's a level of
sequence.
indifference for sure. Like it's Sorlost is all like a huge political like fucking weaving, right? There's all kinds of stuff going on, and that is what's interesting, right? By throwing in that little perspective of like the slave, you're getting it from like all angles.
Yeah.
And it really does make this thing like that Sorlos thread breathe that much more because you're just seeing all the sides of it. I was really impressed. Like I said, this book 2 really solidified me as a fan of this trilogy. Like book 1 I liked, but I mean I found issues in certain areas, and then book 2 just seemed like holy shit. Like it was almost like everything I had to bitch about was gone. Like, you know what I mean? She took every criticism and just worked with it and created something that was just so goddamn dark, dastardly, and cool. Ugh. So going into maybe that chaotic thread, what did you guys think of Marith and Thalia's thread? Because this is one I think that people do either kind of get on board with right away and they love it, or people struggle with it from beginning to end.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of the first book, I want to see them together. And although Merith is just a terrible person who does a lot of terrible things, but there's a part of you that wants to see them make it together somehow. And at least just watching them interact with each other is so interesting. And then although he's doing these terrible things, he goes to these other kingdoms and he's attacking them. In this book, you're kind of like, it's a weird feeling because there's a part of you that wants Merith to win, but there's also he's going into these kingdoms and just shredding whole towns, ripping people apart, his own family members, just butchering them. And it's such a weird feeling reading from his perspective. And I think the thing I probably appreciate most about this story versus the first one is some of these battles, we get into like military strategy a little more. He has his spearmen, he has the cavalry, there's a little bit of strategy. I was concerned that it was going to be all just he
chaos.
Walks onto a battlefield and chaos.
Yeah.
But we actually, he's thinking some things. He has some, generals, and he sits down and makes plans, and like that part of it was probably the strongest part of his story this time. It was when it was, yeah, sure, there's all the chaos, but the actual like planning, and then he's actually has a little bit of strategy at least going into these battles.
Well,
just a drop.
And I liked that in the first book, his like just kill everyone, even my allies, all of that, and he just like won anyway. So he's like failing upwards in the first book, kind of at the end. And in this one at the beginning, I was like, oh God, they're doing this again. But he lost. When the first time he tried to take the capital of the White Isles, he got his ass kicked. So I was like, that like relieved me a little. I kind of thought he had like so much plot armor that he could not ever lose. And so them giving us a loss at the beginning really improved my opinion of the books and of his character. Because I was like, oh God, he's just gonna succeed anyway. It doesn't matter. There's no stakes. And then you got his ass handed to him.
So I think that might be, like you just kind of pointed out, one of the things that some people could, take issue with Merith maybe feeling like he's a little overpowered, right? Like, what's going to stop it? There is no stakes when you're dealing with a character like this. He's just mowing through everything, especially, I mean, this is something I think that there's going to be a lot of people that don't like it, but personally, I loved it. Was when Merith started one-shotting fucking
oh my God.
gigantic godlike creatures. See, this is kind of anticlimactic. Like when you first, like if you just look at it with no imagination. But if you are locked into the story and this, like, the lyrical part of it is really hitting, and your brain is just like creating this crazy battlefield, those one shots are some of the most beautiful fantasy images that I've cooked up. It really struck a chord that reminded me kind of like Tolkien-esque. It's not so clear cut. But it's beautiful, when it happens. But I could see people being like, Jesus Christ, here we go. Here's fucking, the Gary Stu or whatever, and he's just fucking One Punch Man out there killing everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they used the one-shotting in reverse as well, because you have the dragon go out to fight who are they?
There's two different deals. There's one that seemed to be like a phoenix, like a firebird, but then there was the other thing that I feel like it was like only described as godlike creature or something. There is a very it seemed like a very ambiguous description. It seemed like a bad motherfucker, but yet not bad enough for Marith Altrasir.
But there was a sequence where he sends his dragon out.
Yeah, no, there's a couple. There's enemies,
and they take the dragon down like right away, and it creates this sense of doom.
Right, like this thing just is fucked up to dragon, but then Marith comes in and one shots it.
Yeah, I totally kept imagining those as like a Tolkien-esque eagle, like the eagles from Lord of the Rings, but magic. So magic flying eagle flying over the battlefield, and then again, Anna does such a good job of making you root for Marith, even though he shouldn't win. He's gonna go and murder all these people, and like for a second, I'm like, oh no, how's he gonna get out of this one? And it's like, why? Why do I care? He's just gonna murder the whole town anyways. But for that split second, I'm worried for him, and then the eagle charges him, and then he kills it in one shot, and I'm like, okay. But then again, it's just that conflicting emotions. Like, how should I feel about it? And I'm glad he one-shotted it.
I don't know if you guys have read the Silmarillion, but it's like there's the scene where Fingolfin and Morgoth have their showdown. And this is a very interesting part of that book, because it's where you see Morgoth actually shook a bit by this, by this elf, and of course, Fingolfin falls, but it's one of those David Goliath kind of standoffs. But in this book, because of the kind of the way Marith is, it's a lot like that, but like kind of like Christian said, it's flipped. It's flipped, where we're watching the bad guy kind of in the David position, like striking out against life. And I felt like this kind of was a theme being rammed home, not just with Marith, but with his army as well. Like a lot of his enemies seem to almost represent life, where the army Amurath seems to represent death. Yes.
They're shouting constantly.
Death. And at times, it can feel a little cartoonish, like when he burned the city that they stayed in for a while, and they leave the city, and he takes Thalia away, but leaves behind an instruction: go back and burn the city down. It kind of felt like, why? Like I really like military fantasy. So like when I see these like military campaigns, I like conquest and like stabilizing empire. I like seeing the empire building and that kind of thing. Often, but or if they're burning it all down, for there to be a reason. But I get also that they're like kind of subverting and reversing kind of the tropes of like the Dark Lord and showing it from that perspective. And it's also a demon god of death. I mean, I gotta stay in that literary mindset of this is not exactly military fantasy, even when it's depicting a military campaign,
Sure.
So
Marith is unstable too, so
right.
He's gonna do demon god things.
Yeah, okay, that was another thing. So I feel like going back to Marith, I feel like some people might struggle with him being the level of unstable that he can be, because he can be a very emotional guy, right? Like one minute he's just kind of cool, and then just snaps, and he goes into this like, you know, where he's like freaking out about Thalia. Maybe she's turned against him or this or that. Like he's just like paranoia strikes out of nowhere with this guy. And when I was reading it, what it really reminded me of is like Anakin Skywalker. And like when he gets really emotional, he's not supposed to have these emotions. He doesn't know what to do with it. It just fucks this guy up, and he's just a weird dude because of it. That's what Marith reminded me of, man. He was like an awkward Anakin Skywalker. Too much goddamn power, too much fucking emotion.
Yep. He has so many of those moments too, where it's like he'll just snap and he'll just lose. Even when he makes these terrible decisions, like when he wanted to slaughter the town he just conquered. And I think his friend, I'm glad he made a friend in this one, I guess, but his friend Osin was like, "Are you sure?" And then he thought about it. He was like, yeah, murder the whole town. And just like he's just coming up with this shit.
So how far into book 3 before he murders Osin?
How far in before he murders Osin?
Man.
I don't know, but I'll tell you, it's funny because right out the gate when he meets Osin, there's that little memory of Karen, the guy that, you know, that he killed, his lover or whatever, that, and he's like, Karen told Marith back in the day that he didn't trust Osin. So there's like that little like suspect little deal. Maybe it's a red herring or not, who knows, but it's been fed to us as the reader, you know, right out the gate. But the funny thing being is that he seems to be the one character that besides Thalia that might have a voice of reasoning, or at least try to double, like David said, like try to double check these crazy ass orders, you know.
I think somewhere in the climax, even he was trying to get Merritt's attention because he was like, "So we're about to fight. I need orders. Like, what do you want me to do?" And Merritt's like, "I'm your king." And he's like, "I'm trying to keep you the king. So give me an order to do something."
I really like that character.
Yeah.
So also, I guess one other, like going over to, there's that other kind of thread that really contains Tobias, but not just Tobias. What's her name?
Rada.
What was her?
The god creature.
No,
Rada.
I'm thinking about the is it the gal that sold or that bought them from Tobias and took them to the island. Is it Galandria?
I want to say there's an L in there somewhere.
Landra.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so yes, Landra. Landra was their thread is tied together pretty much, right? Tobias and Landra. And I do actually really like what she did with Landra because it's easy to kind of mow. If you're like a fan of Marith or whatever, rolling into the next book, it's kind of easy to be like, "Fuck Landra. I hope this."
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, hopefully she gets a horrible, you know, a horrible plate of nastiness fed to her. But then, you know, Anna Smith Spark has done a deal where she brings you in, gives you her perspective, and you know, one way or the other, I felt like I was beginning to sympathize with somebody that right out the gate I was kind of like, "Fuck this chick."
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
I love this style of storytelling. Erickson and Malazan does this as well, where you pit characters against each other and we're grounded in both of their viewpoints. Because for me, I can't root against either of them. I'm sitting there rooting for both of them, and I'm like, how can this play out so that they all walk out with their skin intact? And, you know, in book 3, I expect, you know, a Hamlet style ending with everyone, maybe or maybe not, including Marith, you know, in a pool of their own blood.
No, that's not what's going to happen. Book 3 is going to come out. They're all going to meet up, just talk about their feelings, and then live happily ever after. That's where we're going. But I totally agree.
I just can't. This thing's going to end in a fucking ball of fire.
I know. I think one of the strengths of this series is just what you've said. The ability we're kind of rooting for everybody. Like, I'd really hated how Tobias turned his back on Marith. But then he's so likable and so fucking reasonable that it's like, I get where he's coming from. And then Landra, by the end of the first book, I fucking hated her. I was like, oh yeah, she's terrible. Even though Marith, you know, she has her reasons to hate Marith.
Right.
And then in this one, it's kind of like seeing her and Tobias team up. And then, man, between Orhan and Tobias and Landra and Merith, I don't know who I want to win this sort of Game of Thrones. You know, who's gonna be the powerful one at the end? Like, if all of them die and there's one person left, whoever that is, there's a chance I like that person. So it's fine.
Yeah,
I guess.
definitely at this point, that's what I would agree. Like literally, I'm so jiving with all the threads, all the characters, you know what I mean, all the motivations that regardless of whatever the fuck happens, I mean, I'll probably be okay with the victor, you know. And that is nuts. And I do love that, like Tobias. Wait a minute, this is something I want to ask you guys because I'm still not 100% clear. Is Tobias under us like a charm? He's under the charm of Merith. Like there's a control there, right? It's not so straightforward. Like there's some kind of pull, and this is why Tobias has made some very weird decisions in his proximity.
Yeah, so that was true, and maybe true again at the end of the first book and at the beginning of this book. And he kind of snaps out of it a little bit towards the beginning of this book during the battle that Merith loses. And he gets out of like Merith's proximity and is able to kind of think a little bit for himself. Then what stops it from being the case, at least to the extent of that, is the influence of Rita. That's how I read it, at least.
Yeah.
Is that Rita's influence kind of like puts at least some kind of a cap on Merith's influence over Tobias.
Yeah, I mean, like for Tobias, like David was saying, I mean, he's an engaging character that you really enjoy, but there are some like conflicting things with his character coming off the first book. You're just kind of like, well, what the fuck did you do that for? But then again, I guess there's a lot of what the fuck moments with a lot of these characters. But man, Tobias has some of the best lines in this book. I mean, they're
was just about to say that.
So filled with like just the most cynical fucking what is it, like demons and gods and fuck.
That one was yes.
So there's two things here with Tobias. One is about your question. I just thought of another aspect of it, and that's that he has two conflicting motivations, and one's that he wants to like get rich and retire and whatnot, and this reminds me of Richard K. Morgan as well. I'm on the third book of the Land Fit for Heroes, and in Richard K. Morgan, the anti-hero, Ringle Eskith, he dreams of a retirement like Tobias does, but he's confronted with the fact that he doesn't really want that, and that it would be empty for him, and he wouldn't be able, because he's just a man of violence, and that's all he knows how to do. And what's he gonna make, shoes, you know? And Tobias has a similar thing where he has this dream of like retiring and having people take care of him, blah blah blah. But at the root, and the reason why he was serving Merith, and the reason why at the end of this book he's fighting Merith, he wants to die in battle before he's too old to die in battle in a way that is glorious.
Right.
So that's the underlying, under all the magic, and it's Rita's influence. She reveals at the end that it wasn't her influence trying to get him to want to kill Merith. It was her influence trying to get him to not want to kill himself. So she removes her influence at the end, and he just wants to die. So he goes out to fight Merith at the end. That's
and
arc, I guess, in this book. It's weird
crazy
arc.
though, because you're talking about a guy that's so cynical, yet he really invokes a shit ton of emotion in that scene, right? I mean, I teared up a little bit fucking when Tobias is finally kind of like made that decision, and he's just fucking like, he's giving up his life, he's going into that fucking battle, and he's gonna do it, kind of deal.
He doesn't even die, right?
No, he doesn't.
Alive at the end of this book?
He doesn't die, but you're pretty sure he's going to, because the way he's selling it.
Dude, he has two different countdowns where he's like, okay, 3 days till my death, 2 days, 1 day, and then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But then he resets the counter and he's like, oh, okay, tonight, one more sunset until my death, and then he's ready to just die, and then he doesn't. But man, yeah, he's had so many great lines throughout. I try to save a couple. Like one was like, fun. Hells yeah, you're enjoying it, aren't you? And then he has some other one, never go up against a drinking, drug-addled, death-obsessed, invulnerable demon. Old secret sellsword tip or something like that.
So actually, I was just about to say that quote, but
Yeah.
did you notice that it's used elliptically? She brings it up in chapter 57. He says it, and then he goes through his last arc in the book, and then when he's fighting at the end, he says it again.
He's like, never go up against the drug-addled.
It's a good tip.
It's so good.
And then he has a moment too where he's like just talking about how he keeps bringing up how shitty life is, right? He's like, life is garbage, life is pain, it's this horrible thing. And he goes on this long rant about how much suffering he's going through and all this, but then he goes, but I'd still rather live. It's still better than death. And I was like, nice. He has a positive attitude.
And in this way, he also reminds me of like the more prototypical grimdark anti-hero.
Totally Logan.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
like something you would
absolutely
find,
right in that category. I would say. I think most people that read these books are going to love Tobias's character. They'll get frustrated with him, sure, but I mean, they're going to love him.
Oh, I was so pissed at him in the first book for betraying Meredith. So mad.
And that's something I try to encourage people. Is like, look, it's good. It's okay to get pissed at characters. It doesn't mean these are bad books. That means they're great. They're invoking this level of, energy and emotion out of you. Like I just recently got almost like rage quit mad with the book, but I only applaud it because it was like, dude, you literally had me fuming pissed. You know what I mean? Because I felt this situation. Like I felt like I was in it and I felt betrayed as much as these other people. And it's cool when that can be played through to the reader. And I do think that Anna Smith Spark has that ability. And it's funny because the other person I'm talking about has somewhat of a similar style. Her style is very lyrical, right? I mean, it brings a very like tempoed, like not only just like darkness, but beauty at the reader. And it's just like, I love the silver lights and stuff. Once again, it kind of reminds me of like Tolkien-esque style, like when you know what I mean, just the imagery being thrown at you.
And without a lot of the boring parts of Homer, there's a Homeric aspect to it as well. So you brought up like the Tolkien influences or the ways in which the literary style of like the prose and the sort of maybe even often poetic style of the prose remind you of Tolkien, but also there's pretty clear Homeric like Iliad and Odyssey, that kind of thing, references, particularly whenever you see that phrase wine dark sea. They didn't have a word for the colors that we would usually ascribe to the ocean in Greek at the time. So wine dark is the closest you get to that. So in Homer, you get like the wine dark sea, and Gotcha. She uses this phrase multiple times in the book. I'm sure there are other Homeric references, but I don't.
Yeah. That's why I wore my wine dark shirt today, just for that reference.
I just recently read Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, and I would say that I don't know if he was an influence on her. I know that he was an influence on Baker, and maybe indirectly, maybe an influence on her or directly. But I would say that there's another like style. There's not many out there, I don't feel like, but there's a similar kind of flair there as far as lyrical prose, the way that Cormac McCarthy really brings it to the reader. His also at times can feel can hit you with this horrible shit, but yet it's disconnected in emotion. So it's like, maybe that's a good reason. So you're not like feeling the full potential of all this horror that he's throwing at you, but that could be something that some people have problems with. I know that, Matt, our buddy on the Discord, one of his big problems with Merritt's perspective is kind of that Homer-esque maybe feel, or that like McCarthy kind of approach where there's a lot going on. And maybe it is cool or flashy or dastardly, but it's also somewhat disconnected and you don't feel the emotion of it. How did you guys feel? Do you guys feel emotionally connected during like the chaos of Merritt's perspective?
I feel like there's absolutely a good amount of distance, and there's there's some moments like when he butchers, his brother and his stepmother, and we don't see that. It basically happens, off camera, and we get he kind of recalls like, yeah, that happened, and then just like casually talking about, yeah, kill everyone in that town, and just there is that disconnection like you're talking about. Even when you have, or I guess up until the point when they go to actual war and they're fighting each other. But even that, like things happen so fast, it doesn't really slow down because you're in his head, I think. And he's just so chaotic and disconnected from life, I think, in general, versus like when you're in Orhan's perspective, right? Then everything kind of slows way down. The writing style completely changes. And I feel like there's more emotion there. You care more about
Sure.
like him, Dareth, and his love story, how conflicted he is over Bill. He does have feelings for her. He might not be in love with her the way he is like romantically with Dareth, but he has love for her. He does care about her, even though there's so much weird energy between them. And he cares about his city. He fucking loves Sorlost. He wants to return it, out of this dust bowl that it currently is. He wants to make it better. But yeah, with Merritt's perspective, I definitely feel that disconnection. You're a little distant from what's going on.
Well, there's a couple of points here. Anna Smith Spark, you intentionally creates that distance in a couple of ways, because you're not always in Merritt's head in the chaos of the battle. I actually feel most emotionally connected to Merritt's perspective when he gets all paranoid and crazy with Thalia, and that's where I really feel it. But there are only a few battle scenes where you get it from Merritt's perspective, actually. She achieves psychic distance by showing you the battle from Thalia's perspective in third person, from Tobias's perspective in third person limited, but also she slips. I didn't know if you guys noticed this or what you thought of this. And now I was going to ask, why do you think she does this? But now when David says this thing about distance, I see why she does it. There are a few moments where she slips from third person limited to third person omniscient, and it's looking at Merith with no clear perspective attached to it. And in those moments, she's always using the like his, capital H, his, like talking about a god, to refer to Merith and his actions. I don't know if you guys picked up on this.
No.
And I was like, why did she do this?
Yeah.
But it's the distance. That's why she does it. To take you out of Merritt's head, but still kind of be attached to him. It's like a camera pointing at him, but it's a camera that's like biblical almost, because it's referring to him like he's God.
Yeah, those could totally be his Amrath moments, right?
I think that's it. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
The Amrath that he's meant to be, the demon he's meant to be. That's maybe in those moments, those exemplify what he's becoming. I can totally see that.
I think it with like what with you pointing it out, David, is like there's a multitude of emotion attached to the Sorlos thread. There's just, there's a whole lot of feelings going into that one specifically. So it could maybe feel like Merith is, you're not going to get that full spectrum. The most you get is like what Christian says when he starts going into these paranoid deals about his, the love of his life. Like, oh, I can't trust her. This is like, starts to like, flare up the fire within him. And we feel that. But I think also too, it's one that we just can kind of ignore, or maybe some people just aren't very familiar with it. But I think that there is a lot of emotion in Merith's perspective. It's just a lot of rage. It is pissed off, dude. I mean, like right out the gate in the beginning of this book, when there's that deal with like him reflecting on stabbing his father. This is some of the most like anger fueled poetry I have ever read. I mean, it's disturbing and dark, but it also like I could feel the anger, you know what I mean? That the rage, and then you also get those little like glimpses of regret in him too that create the conflict. It's really powerful, but it can be kind of one-way street sort of with Merith, I guess. I guess that's my argument for those. can't find much emotion in him. I think the thing is it's there and it's screaming. It's just maybe just one focused in one emotion, not many.
Yeah.
Speaking,
And maybe I phrased that poorly. There's definitely tons of emotion in Merritt's story, especially when all the chaos is even happening. And the way it's described, I think, is literally dripping with emotion. But you could tell with the regrets that he has over like murdering his brother and his stepmother. He does it, but then he just chops up his uncle because he says, "You did that. You're the one who wanted that to happen.
The
It wasn't
uncle
really
thing
on
was
me."
weird and crazy to me.
Yeah. It's like he wanted it, but then he regretted it. And so he had to blame somebody else and be like, no, wait, that's you. You were the one. And like, you could tell he's going through so many different things.
but at least with that, there's a Machiavellian reason behind making that move. Or I thought there was till he burned down the Capitol. But because he's like, he turns on his uncle after he doesn't need him anymore to then go invade his uncle's country. And actually, I was just thinking that was one of the few battle scenes where you get Meredith's viewpoint, not the deific his zoomed out or somebody else's perspective. You get Meredith's in his head viewpoint when he turns on his uncle's troops. And I just thought it was hilarious when they're like, traitor, traitor, and he's like thinking to himself, like he's getting so pissed off. Mark made me think of this because he was talking about the rage. He's getting so pissed off, like what did you expect? Of course this is what was going to happen. Why are you acting surprised? And that was just like, I was just like, that was a very almost Joe Abercrombie type moment for the character, which was really good. I did want to bring up one other thing about perspective, because we talked about the third person omniscient, but there is one other character where she goes, instead of having third person limited, she goes into first person.
Thalia.
For Thalia. So why do you guys think that is? Like, what's the intended effect? Why only Thalia? What's special about this character that she gets the first person treatment?
Well, I'll tell you, at least from maybe a smart like move to only put you in if you're going to put you in the head of any character in this world, Thalia is going to be the most easy for the reader to sympathize with. It'll be the easiest like transition into a character's head, because honestly, if you slam a reader into Meredith's mind, they might not they might not be able to fucking handle that much inside of the head. You know what I mean? It just, I don't know. But then the two, there's things like maybe she's hiding. We can't get the look inside Meredith's head or Tobias's head or so-and-so's head, because we might get a peek at something that we're not supposed to know yet.
It makes me think that this is her story that we're just following along. Like all these events are happening, but she's the one. This is really her story. And by the end of it, maybe she ends up being like Meredith and Orhan kill each other in the third book, and she ends up the ruler of Sore Lost, and she is ruling all these things or something.
Well, I mean, there at the end of the book, we really get shined on to like just how powerful Thalia really is, right? I mean, you might have been maybe thinking there was more than meets the eye, but this book really lets the reader know plain as day, like she got some juice.
Yeah.
Maybe at the end she'll be like the Horatio type character. You have all the bodies laying about everywhere, everybody in their own blood, and somebody comes into the room and it's like, what the hell happened? And she's the one that's telling the story. So it's I, because she's the one that did those things.
Yeah. And I think that she says it at some point, like Rita is telling her, like she thinks that Meredith has her captive, and Thalia thinks to herself, they really think I'm his prisoner. And, she clearly knows she's more powerful than Meredith. She's like, what are you guys talking about? I'm fine. And then the mist monster thing comes out, and it's literally killing Meredith. And that monster, man, I think somebody said it in the Discord. If we could have got a little bit more of that, I forget what it was called, something with the G, but the mist thing, if we could have seen that a little more, that was really cool. He was fucking up Meredith. And then Thalia just decides, no, just annihilates him.
Wasn't that thing Rita?
No, no, that was the thing in the ring. That was their whole little mission to go to find the
Oh,
body,
okay.
and then they released the monster, the demon inside the ring, and that thing comes. It was called like the Gabalath or
Yeah, the
something like
Gabalith
that.
or something.
Yeah, okay, okay.
And that creature was really cool. But then he was in there for 2 seconds before Thalia just
Yeah,
fucking wiped
she
him
does.
away.
Okay,
No.
there's a little level of like Anna Smith Spark has really brought some cool creature, like monsters, whatever. But we do get very, very like glimpses of them. You're not going to
Mhm.
sit in it too long, which can be kind of a good decision in the long run. Because sometimes when you get shit just jammed down your throat, you're like, by the end of the series, you're like, yeah, I'm not even that. It's not that flashy or cool anymore. I mean, it was overused.
Yeah.
But when you only
It's,
sprinkle it or only just give you a little bit, it
it's
can
like a good
go
horror
a
movie.
long way. Honestly, like we were talking in that first discussion, remember the dragon conversation we had, David?
Yeah.
About me not
The-
really digging dragons and shit.
The way she describes dragons is
Dude, she has just really turned me around to the whole dragon deal.
I was
And
just about to ask you, how did you feel about the dragon in this one?
oh my fucking god, this is like this shit had me zooming on dragons, dude. I was just like, these are the coolest things ever. Like one of my
Yes.
favorite scenes in this has to do with Merritt's dragon. Like it was just so visually stunning in my mind. Like it's one of those like fantasy moments that just sears its way into your brain, and you just will always recall it whenever you think about fantasy. Oh, so good. It actually was nice too, because I didn't realize another book I was about to read contained a dragon, and realistically, just how jazzed I was from her dragons made me like, really get on board with that book. Like,
Yeah.
I really dig what she has done with dragons, I guess, here in her fantasy world. They're scary as fuck.
Yeah. And
there's
I'm just a fan.
only 3 authors I think that I've read and all the fantasy I've read that pull off dragons as well as she does. It's her, Tolkien, and Stephen Erickson in Malazan Book of the Fallen. He uses them a lot less sparingly than she does, but he does it really well. But every other fantasy, I feel like, mishandles dragons, and she did it just perfectly. Like it was like it felt like seeing Smaug for the first time. That feeling of being 4 years old again,
Yeah.
and seeing this fucking magnificent creature.
Yeah.
She captures it
Yeah,
perfectly.
she did great, man. She did great. Yeah, I went after hers. I was getting Baker is another guy who I would say I really dig the way he pulled off dragons. I think if you're into like the way Tolkien pulled off dragons, you'll jump on board with how Baker does his, but his are way more sinister. But this shit, man, she just killed it to me. Like I really had such a it was such a pleasure to read the parts with dragons in them, and that it just blows my mind. Because like we were saying, just a book ago, I was very hesitant and have been for so many years, just from like growing up in the 80s and being pelted with dragon this and dragon that. every fucking fantasy thing had 12 goddamn dragons and dragon swords and gee. But yeah,
I'm
now
just a
I got
fan
no
of
complaints.
cool
Now I'm
scenes.
like, bring on the beautiful death machines.
Yeah. I just love the combination of you have the dragons and Merritt's shadow monsters flying over the battlefield with this golden magical eagle, and then the mages shooting up their like thunderbolts or whatever they have, and just all this darkness and claws and a dragon and a bird, and it's just all sort of like the image, like that is like
Imagery
an
is
iconic
strong and
moment.
powerful and just beautiful as fuck.
Yeah, I'm just a fan of cool moments like that. It was awesome.
Sweet. Well, guys, I know that we're kind of getting to that hour point. So, holy shit, I lost my boom. All right. So, is there anything that you guys want to kind of like final comment? Is there something we didn't touch on?
Let's see.
I'm trying to think myself, like something that maybe.
I think we got it all from my
Yeah, we did
perspective.
pretty good job. Let's do this. How about let's just do a real quick any kind of predictions for book 3? Because no, you guys haven't started yet, have you?
Nope.
No, I mean, I've been like, I waited for you guys, so I have not even looked at the fucking page one. So, because I wanted to be able to do that, like make a little prediction or whatever. What do you guys do? Is there anything that you see is going to happen in book 3?
Yes. I think this is all led up to a Marith versus Orhan showdown. Marith is going to conquer the entire world, basically, everything near him, and then he's going to march on Sorlost. And somehow, in the beginning of the book, I assume Orhan will have to figure out how to get out of. I think he's in custody by the end with the Ithish or Imish. He's going to have to overcome that, but then he's going to control his city again. Maybe make a deal with the Imish or Ithish, whatever one has control of Sorlost. Maybe he'll make a deal with them. They'll band together and fight Marith, and that's the big showdown that this has all been leading to. And I guess, I mean, I can't see it going any other way, but that's my prediction and what I'm looking forward to.
Gotcha.
I think that that's right. I just think at the end, everybody's going to be laying in pools of their own blood, and we will find out that the Horatio character will be Thalia, and she'll tell whoever shows up to find out why everybody's dead what happened, and that's why that we get the I. So we got. I want a Hamlet ending. That's what I'm looking forward to in the next book.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, this was a really tough one for me to call. Like, honestly, looking back, I'll just say it, like the first thing I thought after finishing the Tower of Living Dying was this thing's gonna end with Thalia killing Marith.
I could see that.
If anyone's gonna kill this dude, it's gonna be her. Though I don't know if he actually is gonna die. I guess that's my prediction. Yeah, love. Like she's just gonna finally get to a point where she just can't love him anymore. Or I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. She's definitely the one that has the power, right? She is the one that seems to be the only one that's probably capable of fucking stopping him, considering that she can stop the one thing that we watched kicking his ass, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think that there's plus I don't know. Maybe I just find Thalia to be the one kind-hearted and moral person out of this whole world. So maybe she might, I don't know, take a stand for good. I don't know. Shit, we'll see, guys.
I feel like she's still gonna love him, but she's gonna know the right thing to do for the world is to kill him. Or if it has a very tragic ending, Marith will kill her and he'll just conquer the world.
Ooh, man, if Marith kills Thalia, that's a very dark moment. Whew. Whew.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that Marith will find some more dragons to use in his march on Sollost. And she will use elliptical storytelling. I'm just going overboard with the predictions here. She will use elliptical storytelling to loop the climactic battle around to where it's reminiscent of the prologue of book 1, where you have the original Amrath and it shows the battle before like the story really starts. Marith will like embody that in the climax of the 3rd book, I think.
Interesting. Well, we shall see. When are you guys planning on getting to it?
I'll start it probably tonight.
Right. Yeah, I got to finish Dreams of Steel, which is super short, and I got 2 other books that I'm like 3/4 through that I got to finish, and then I'm going to start it. So it's not going to be too much longer. Probably at the end of maybe next month.
I don't know when I'll finish it because I have to rush to finish House of Chains because everybody's vacations kind of like screwed up our recording schedule. But then I'll have like a month off of Malazan. So if I'm not finished before then, I will finish it during that month and we can talk about doing it either right before my vacation or right after my vacation.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, for me, I mean, it's like I just finished this, the Aspect Emperor series. So I have a whole lot of free time on my hands now to smash out stuff because that shit consumed everything.
Is that the one where Baker does dragons?
Yeah, Baker is amazing, dude. His dragons are called Raku, but they're dragons. They're pretty fucking terrifying as well. But you got to get pretty far into it before you start seeing them.
Okay, I'll probably start this on July 1st. I think that'll.
Is that where to start with Backer? Sorry, I should have.
Oh,
waited
if
till we
you
started.
want to start with Baker, go to oh, sorry, dude. The Darkness That Comes Before is where you want to start.
Okay,
Right on.
I already have that one. So.
Yes, this is a beautiful book, man. And she, Anna Smith Spark was definitely an author who has been inspired by Baker. So that was one of the reasons why I picked up her work. Because after becoming a huge fan of Baker, I wanted to see, who else had a similar style or take to fantasy. And though I would say that their prose is different, they're both very lyrical and have a very powerful prose. But they do have their own styles, and I can appreciate that. So it's not like a copycat thing, you know what I mean? They're both. I applaud both of their styles a lot. Anyway, right on, guys. Before we get too crazy with it, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Just know that we have more shit coming down the hill. All right, we will be finishing book 3. We'll be coming back at you with the discussion of that, and then we're also talking about just doing a discussion of the overall series, and we'll see who we can't cook up for that bad boy. All right. Till then, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and check out these guys' channels. Links in the description. Right on. Peace.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Later.
Right on.